What happens when a woman gives her love, her trust, her loyalty to a man incapable of empathy? What happens when her soul is slowly eroded not by physical blows, but by 1,000 tiny betrayals of dignity? This is not just a story about abuse. This is a warning, a lesson, and maybe, someone out there, it's your wake-up call. Now let me tell you something painfully true. A narcissistic husband does not marry a wife because he loves her. He marries her because he sees her as an extension of himself. He does not choose her for who she is, but for how she makes him look. She is not a partner, she is a mirror, and the moment she reflects back anything less than his imagined greatness, the war begins. At first, he will love, bomb her, he will shower her with praise and passion, she will feel chosen, like she's been seen for the first time, but that isn't love, it's bait. Then slowly, he starts to chip away at her sense of reality. He'll gaslight her, tell her she's overreacting when he's cold, when he ignores her, when he humiliates her in public. He'll twist facts until she doubts her own memory. He'll compare her to other women, his exes, celebrities, even strangers, always implying she's not enough. And she'll believe it because he's made himself the judge of her worth. He won't scream, at least not always. His violence is psychological. He will ignore her pain, mock her vulnerability, punish her for having needs. If she cries, he calls her dramatic. If she's tired, she's lazy. If she speaks up, she's disrespectful. His rules are invisible, shifting, and rigged against her. But here's the darkest part. He'll tell her he loves her, even while tearing her down, and that's the cruelest twist. Because she'll stay, she'll try harder. She'll think, maybe if I love him more, he'll change. But he won't, because in his world, he is never wrong. Ever, Jordan Peterson often says that tyrants don't begin as monsters. They start as cowards, afraid of their own inadequacies, afraid of real intimacy, and so they dominate instead. That's what the narcissistic husband does. He creates a kingdom of fear inside his own home. And his wife becomes its prisoner. But let me speak directly to that woman now. You are not crazy. You are not too much. You are not hard to love. You were manipulated. You gave everything to a man who only knew how to take. But that doesn't mean you are broken. It means you are loyal. It means you are strong enough to stay and try. But now you must be even stronger and walk away. You see, this is about reclaiming your sovereignty, about refusing to be defined by a man who doesn't know how to love, about remembering who you were before he convinced you to forget. Because deep inside you, under all the confusion and shame, there is a woman who is worthy of real love. Not control, not conditional affection, but love that sees you, supports you, cherishes you. You will need courage. You will need boundaries. You will need to grieve the fantasy you once believed in. But you will rise. You are not meant to live in someone else's shadow. You are meant to shine. So choose yourself now. It's not selfish. It's sacred. And as Jordan Peterson might say, pick up the heaviest burden you can carry and walk away from the place that taught you to kneel. Because when you do, you begin the slow, sacred process of becoming whole again, and that, my friend, is how you reclaim your life, certainly, based on your overall prompt style, recent conversations, and the current speech titled How a Narcissistic Husband Treats His Wife. Here are 8 main key points for a powerful, motivational Jordan Peterson style speech. These are emotionally compelling, psychologically accurate, and designed for a long-form speech. 1. He doesn't love you. He needs control. A narcissistic husband doesn't choose a wife out of love. He chooses her to validate his ego, to serve as an accessory to his fragile sense of self. This isn't partnership, it's possession. His version of love is control dressed in charm. 2. He manipulates through praise and punishment early on. He love bombs, lavishing praise, attention, affection. But once you're emotionally invested, he begins the cycle of withdrawal, coldness, and cruelty. This inconsistency keeps you craving the high of his approval, like an addict chasing a fix. 3. He gaslights to twist your reality. He denies what you saw. He questions your memory. He blames you for his behavior. Over time, you begin to doubt yourself more than you doubt him. That's how psychological abuse operates. It doesn't wound the body. It shatters your sense of self. 4. Your needs become a threat to his ego. A narcissistic husband sees your emotional needs as criticism. If you're sad, he feels attacked. If you ask for help, he calls you needy. He demands devotion but gives none in return. You become smaller so he can feel bigger. 5. He is a master of the double life to the world. He may seem charming, devoted, even ideal, but at home he's cold, critical, and sometimes cruel. This contrast is part of the abuse. It isolates you and silences you, who will believe you when everyone thinks he's perfect. 6. He doesn't change. You just learn to shrink. You adapt. You walk on eggshells. You stop asking for things. You shrink your light just to keep the peace. But the peace is fake. It's compliance born of survival, not love, and one day you realize you don't recognize yourself anymore. 7. You're not broken. You're wounded. You are not too sensitive. You are not unstable. You are emotionally wounded by someone incapable of empathy, and that is survivable, but only if you stop blaming yourself and start reclaiming your worth. 8. Healing begins when you choose yourself. You cannot fix a narcissist, but you can save yourself. You can set boundaries. You can grieve the dream you had. You can rise from the ruins, because healing begins the moment you stop trying to change him and start choosing you. Would you like me to now expand any of these into long-form motivational speech segments, or build out the full speech from these key points? When we talk about how a narcissistic husband treats his wife, we have to begin with an uncomfortable truth that many don't want to hear. He doesn't actually love her, not in the way love is meant to be understood. Not in a way that requires empathy, responsibility, or the willingness to be transformed by intimacy. He doesn't choose her because he sees her soul or honors her being. He chooses her because she fits the image, because she looks like she can play the role of the perfect reflection. She becomes the mirror through which he validates his superiority, his self-importance, and his illusion of control. What he wants isn't love. What he wants is someone who won't challenge his distorted sense of self. And the moment she does, the mask begins to slip. See, love at its core is about vulnerability. It's about allowing another person to see the truth of who you are, your wounds, your fears, your flaws, and choosing to connect anyway. But the narcissist cannot tolerate that level of depth. Vulnerability terrifies him because it threatens the fragile narrative he clings to, that he is special, infallible, always right. So rather than bond with a partner as an equal, he seeks someone he can dominate emotionally. That's the setup. That's the game. In the beginning, he might seem like the ideal man, charming, generous, charismatic. He knows how to put on a show, and because many women have been conditioned to confuse intensity with sincerity, they fall for it. They believe the whirlwind attention is a sign of real connection, but it's not. It's a performance, a strategy, a manipulation. He's not falling in love. He's selecting his supply, and when you become that source of supply, your role is no longer to be yourself. Your role is to constantly reflect his ego back to him, without flaw, without failure. The moment you express a boundary, a feeling, a need, he sees it as betrayal, not because you've done something wrong, but because your individuality contradicts his fantasy. In his mind, he's not looking for a partner, he's looking for a prop, something to decorate his life, something to praise him, absorb his rage, stay silent when he's cruel, and worship him when he's indifferent. And yet you, the woman, don't realize what's happening at first. You think maybe he's just stressed, maybe it's your fault, maybe if you just try harder, love harder, do more, it'll go back to the way it was in the beginning. But that beginning wasn't real. It was bait. The real man was always the one who flinches when you're in pain, who rolls his eyes when you cry, who punishes you for showing your humanity. A narcissistic husband doesn't seek emotional connection. He seeks emotional dominance. Love isn't the foundation of the relationship. Control is, and control can come in many forms. Sometimes it's through subtle criticisms, sometimes through passive-aggressive silence, sometimes through explosive rage that makes you question your safety. But the goal is always the same, to make you question yourself so you don't question him. He doesn't say, "I love you." He says, "You're nothing without me." Not always in words, but in tone, in action, in the way he watches you break down and feels nothing. In the way he convinces you that you're too emotional, too dramatic, too difficult, and slowly you begin to believe it. You begin to edit yourself, censor your truth, suppress your instincts, until one day you realize that you're not living, you're surviving. You're not thriving, you're shrinking. You can't build a healthy relationship with someone who sees you as an object, a possession, a reflection of their own insecurity, and yet many women stay, not because they're weak, but because they're deeply loyal. They want to fix it, they want to redeem the man they married, they want to prove that their love can heal what's broken. But here's the brutal truth: you cannot love someone out of narcissism. You cannot pour enough into someone who is an emotional black hole. And I'm not saying that to be cruel. I'm saying that to set you free. You are not broken because you stayed. You are not foolish because you hoped. You are human, and it's time to return to that humanity. To come back to the part of you that still knows what love is supposed to feel like. Not fear, not confusion, not silence. Jordan Peterson once said that to stand up straight with your shoulders back is not just about posture, it's about courage. It's about facing what is most painful with eyes wide open. And for many women, that pain is realizing that the man they loved never truly saw them, that what they mistook for love was actually manipulation, that what they gave their heart to was a lie wrapped in charisma. But once you see it, once you truly understand the depth of that betrayal, you can never unsee it, and from that moment forward, you begin to wake up. You begin to reclaim yourself, not because he changed, but because you did, because you finally stopped waiting for someone to save you, and realized you had the strength to save yourself, and that is the beginning of everything. He doesn't just abuse you, he conditions you. A narcissistic husband isn't chaotic by accident. He's strategic. He knows what he's doing even if he doesn't admit it. He studies you. He figures out what makes you feel seen, what makes you feel special, what makes you open your heart. And then he uses it. At the beginning, he gives you everything: attention, admiration, passion. He makes you feel like the center of the universe. And to someone who's been starving for emotional connection, that feels like home. You think, finally, someone gets me. You think it's destiny. It's not. It's the setup. That phase of overwhelming affection is called love bombing. But it's not real love. It's a mask. It's the high before the crash. He showers you with words you've waited your whole life to hear. Not because he means them, but because he knows they hook you. It's not affection. It's ammunition. Because what he gives, he will soon take away. And that's when the manipulation begins. Once he knows you're invested, once your guard is down, he starts the cycle. He pulls away. He becomes cold, critical, distant. You're confused. You think, did I do something wrong? Is he upset with me? And instead of pulling back, you chase him. You try harder. You apologize for things you didn't do. You shrink yourself to earn back the affection that was never unconditional to begin with. This is the praise-punishment loop, and it's not a glitch in the system. It's the system. One day he tells you how lucky he is to have you. The next he ignores you for hours. One day he's posting pictures of you, calling you his queen. The next he's scrolling through Instagram while you sit beside him, invisible. This hot, cold dynamic is not a mistake. It's how he controls you, because every time he withholds his attention, you feel a deep ache, and every time he gives it back, even a crumb, you feel relief, and that relief, it becomes addictive. You confuse it for love. You start believing that your worth depends on his mood, that your value is measured by how happy he is. You lose yourself in the chase. Jordan Peterson talks often about the deep human need for order, for meaning, for structure. But when you're in a relationship like this, your nervous system becomes the structure. You live in reaction to his approval, his moods, his silence. You stop knowing what you want. You stop knowing who you are. You become a reflection of his needs. This is psychological warfare, and it's disguised as romance. He doesn't scream every day. He doesn't hit you, but he punishes you with silence, with comparison, with sarcasm. He makes sure you know when you've disappointed him. He makes you earn his forgiveness even when you did nothing wrong. And worst of all, he does it with a smile. He plays the victim. He convinces you that you're the one who's never satisfied, that you're too emotional, too sensitive, too much, and you begin to believe him. That's the trap. You stop speaking up. You silence your intuition. You explain away the pain. He's just tired. He didn't mean it like that. He's under a lot of stress, but inside you're dying. Because you know something is wrong, you just don't have the words for it yet. But let me say it clearly for you. It is not your fault. This is not love. This is not partnership. This is not what you were created for. This is manipulation. Love does not punish. Love does not keep score. Love does not vanish when you make a mistake. Love does not demand perfection to be present. and deep down you know this. That's why it hurts so much. That's why even in the moments of affection, there's fear in your gut. Because you know it's temporary, you know it's conditional, you know that at any moment the switch could flip and he'll turn cold again. And that is not safety, that is survival. You were not made to survive your relationship. You were made to thrive in it. You were made to be seen, not studied, not used, not measured against your ability to please a broken man. So, what now? Now you begin to wake up, to name the pattern, to feel the anger, to stop blaming yourself, to stop mistaking manipulation for affection, because the moment you stop chasing his approval is the moment you start finding your worth. As Jordan Peterson would say in his lectures, do not allow yourself to become a tool of someone else's pathology, and that includes emotional manipulation disguised as love. You are not meant to live in a cycle of being punished for your humanity. You are meant to live in truth, and the truth is, you deserve love that doesn't make you bleed for it. You begin to doubt yourself, not because you're unstable, but because someone made you feel that way. He didn't hit you, he didn't scream, but he did something far more dangerous. He made you question your own reality. That's what gaslighting is, and a narcissistic husband is a master at it. It starts small. A missed appointment, a hurtful comment, you say, that really upset me, and he says, I never said that. You're being too sensitive. You say, I saw the text messages. He says, you're imagining things, you're paranoid. It happens again and again. And every time your grip on the truth gets a little weaker, not because the facts aren't real, but because his version is so convincing, so confident, so coldly delivered that you begin to wonder, maybe I am crazy. That's the horror of gaslighting. It doesn't just distort the truth. It breaks the mirror inside of you. It makes you feel like you can't trust your eyes, your ears, your emotions. And once you lose trust in your own perception, you're not just controlled, you're erased. This is not accidental, this is not ignorance, this is design. He twists reality because he cannot tolerate accountability, and instead of owning his behavior, he rewrites it. When he lies, it's your fault for questioning him. When he cheats, it's because you weren't affectionate enough. When he explodes, it's because you provoked him. Every bad moment is rewritten, and you become the villain in your own story. Jordan Peterson often speaks about the danger of people who avoid truth at all costs, how it leads to tyranny, resentment, destruction, and that's exactly what the narcissist lives in, a personal tyranny. He must always be the hero or the victim, never the perpetrator, and in order to maintain that fantasy, he sacrifices your sanity, and you begin to spiral. You stop bringing things up. You walk on eggshells. You second guess every word before you say it, because every conversation turns into a trial where you're the one being judged. And here's the most brutal part. When you finally do get upset, when you finally cry, scream, beg for clarity, he uses that as proof that you're crazy. That's the double bind, that's the trap. He pushes you to emotional collapse, then points to your collapse as evidence that you're unstable, and the more you react, the more power he feels, because now, not only has he controlled the narrative, he's convinced you that your feelings are the problem. You stop asking yourself, is he treating me right? And start asking, what's wrong with me? That shift, that internal collapse is exactly what gaslighting is designed to do. It makes you forget who you are. And it replaces your voice with his, but hear me now, you are not crazy, you are not overreacting, you are being psychologically manipulated. There is a difference between emotional immaturity and psychological warfare. And gaslighting is warfare. It is a violation of your mind, your truth, your voice, and the damage it leaves behind is deep. Not just confusion, but shame, not just doubt, but silence, and that silence can last for years. This is why so many women in these relationships don't leave, because they don't even trust their own reasons for leaving. They've been conditioned to see their pain as invalid, their memories as distorted, their feelings as dangerous. They stay because they don't have access to their own clarity anymore. But here's where it begins to change, when you start to name it, when you start to say, I'm not making this up, when you start to journal the patterns, when you share your story with someone safe, when you hear other women echo the same experiences and realize, I'm not alone, I'm not broken, this is real. Because once you reclaim your truth, the gaslight starts to dim. And real truth, is powerful. It burns through confusion. It destroys delusion, and it begins to rebuild the shattered compass inside you. You must understand, his version of reality is not the truth. It's a defense mechanism built to protect his ego from the accountability he refuses to face, but your reality, your lived experience is valid, your memories matter, your emotions are not defects, they are data. Jordan Peterson often emphasizes that the truth is not optional, it is necessary, and when you deny truth to preserve comfort, you pay with your soul. That's what you've been doing, preserving his comfort, preserving his ego, at the cost of your clarity, your identity, your peace. But that stops now. You were not made to live in a house where reality bends to someone else's insecurities. You were made to stand in the light of truth, no matter how painful, because truth is the foundation of healing. So begin again, not by fixing him, but by believing you. That's where your freedom begins. One of the most disorienting, soul-wrecking things about being married to a narcissistic man is that nobody believes you. Not your friends, not your family, sometimes not even your therapist, because what they see is not what you see. What they see is the polished exterior, the charm, the sophistication, the good husband. The great dad, the helpful neighbor, he knows exactly how to play the role, and it is a role. Behind closed doors, it's a different world entirely. He isn't warm or generous or attentive, he is cold. Calculated, distant, condescending, he may not scream. He doesn't have to. His cruelty is quiet. His abuse is in the micro expressions, the eye rolls, the smirks, the silences that last for hours. He doesn't need to beat you. He just erases you, piece by piece, smile by smile, until one day you don't recognize your own face in the mirror. But when you try to talk about it, when you finally try to say, something is wrong, I'm not okay, the world looks at you like you're crazy. Because the version of him they know is so convincing, so perfect, so put together, and you look exhausted, you look anxious, you look confused and defeated, so they believe him. This is what makes the double life so dangerous. It's not just about deception, it's about isolation. The narcissistic husband builds his reputation like a fortress. It becomes his shield, his weapon, and he uses it to silence you. If you try to speak out, you're painted as ungrateful. Disloyal, overreacting, he's such a good guy, they say, you're lucky to have him. And you smile and nod while dying inside. Jordan Peterson has spoken at length about the archetypal masks we wear in society, how dangerous it becomes when we are no longer integrated with truth. And this is exactly what's happening here. The narcissist lives in a fractured self. The mask and the man are not the same, and the gap between them is where you live, trapped, alone, screaming in silence. This is why you begin to question everything, not just your marriage, but your memory, your instincts, your entire sense of reality, because he's not cruel all the time. There are days when he's affectionate. Days when he's funny. Days when he helps with the kids or surprises you with dinner or tells you how proud he is, and it makes you think, maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm the problem, but that's the trick. He gives just enough to keep you doubting your pain, just enough kindness to fog the mirror, but that kindness is never consistent, never unconditional. It's given when it serves him, and withdrawn when you need it most. This duplicity isn't accidental. It's a survival strategy, because as long as he can control how others see him, he never has to face how broken he truly is. As long as he can keep you off balance, he doesn't have to change. And as long as you keep questioning your own sanity, he gets to stay in power. You may be asking yourself, why would someone do this? The answer is as painful as it is simple. He needs the lie more than he wants the truth. The illusion of being a great man is more valuable to him than the reality of being a good one. So you live two lives too. The one where you perform, where you keep up appearances, and the one where you cry alone in the bathroom because no one would believe you anyway. But I need you to hear this, clearly and without doubt. You are not imagining it. You are not unstable. You are not too sensitive. You are living with a man who has two faces, and only one of them gets love from the world. The other one you see in private, and that truth is enough. You don't need anyone else to validate it. As Jordan Peterson once said, if you betray yourself, if you betray your own experience, you'll lose everything, and that's the warning here. You cannot continue to deny what you feel, what you know, just because everyone else sees something different. Your soul knows what is real, your body knows, your silence knows, and the more you suppress it to protect his image, the more you abandon yourself. But you don't have to live that way. You don't have to smile while suffering. You don't have to defend someone who is destroying you from the inside out, because the truth doesn't need permission to exist. It only needs one person brave enough to speak it. It starts with little things. You stop wearing that outfit because he made a sarcastic comment about it. You stop talking to that friend because he rolled his eyes every time her name came up. You stop bringing up what's bothering you because he always finds a way to make you feel guilty for even having a problem in the first place. You think you're compromising. You think you're being mature, keeping the peace, choosing your battles. But what's really happening is that you're shrinking, slowly, silently, unnoticed by the world, but deeply felt by your soul. You start to disappear in your own life. That's the most heartbreaking part about being with a narcissistic husband. You wait for him to change, to soften, to see the damage he's causing, and he doesn't. Instead, you adapt. You become smaller, quieter, more agreeable, more apologetic. You learn to predict his moods, adjust your words, edit your facial expressions just to avoid another cold night, another guilt trip, another dismissive glare that feels like a knife to your spirit. You mold yourself around his dysfunction. And the longer you do this, the more you lose access to the person you used to be, the version of you that laughed freely, cried openly, spoke without second, guessing every syllable. That version of you fades, and in her place stands someone who's always bracing, always cautious, always calculating, and yet you tell yourself it's just a phase, he's under stress, maybe if I'm just more supportive, more loving, more patient. You hang on to the memory of who he was in the beginning, those early days when he seemed tender, attentive, full of fire and adoration. You keep hoping that man will return, but he won't, because that man was never real. He was a mask, a performance, a bait to lure you in. The real man is the one who makes you feel like you're hard to love, the one who punishes you with silence when you cry, the one who turns your vulnerability into ammunition. That's the man you've been adjusting to, and the question you have to ask yourself is this: why are you the one changing? Jordan Peterson often speaks about the human tendency to choose safety over truth, to stay in the known hell rather than venture into the unknown. And that's what many women do in these relationships. They stay not because they're weak, but because they're conditioned to believe that if they try harder, things will get better, but they won't. Because you're not dealing with someone who lacks the tools, you're dealing with someone who lacks the will. This isn't about communication breakdowns or mismatched love languages. This is about control. About power, about emotional starvation that wears the costume of a marriage, and every time you excuse it, you shrink a little more. Every time you tell yourself it's not that bad, you betray yourself. Every time you choose his comfort over your truth, you bury your own voice 1 inch deeper under the weight of fear. You're not becoming more peaceful. You're becoming more numb. You're not growing more patient. You're growing more silent. You're not adapting. You're disappearing. And here's the part no one tells you: he doesn't have to change, because you're doing all the changing for him. You're doing the work, carrying the weight, managing the emotions for two people. And he's letting you because it keeps him comfortable. But comfort is not love. Peace is not the same as silence. Submission is not intimacy. So the question becomes, when is it enough? When do you stop negotiating with your own soul just to keep a man happy who doesn't even see your worth? The truth is, real love doesn't require you to disappear. Real love invites you to become more of who you are, not less. Real love challenges both partners to grow, to rise, to transform. It's not perfect, but it's honest. Jordan Peterson once said that if you want to change the world, you start by cleaning your own room. I'd add to that, if you want to save your life, you start by refusing to shrink for someone who refuses to grow. You were not born to tiptoe around a man's ego. You were not made to soften your light so someone else doesn't feel small. And you sure as hell weren't meant to spend your one life waiting for someone to become who they pretended to be in the beginning. He won't change, but you can. You can stop shrinking, and you can start standing, because your truth deserves space, and so do you. You've probably looked in the mirror more than once and wondered, what happened to me? There was a time when you were vibrant. When you laughed without permission, when your voice carried weight, not hesitation, when you felt safe inside your own mind, but somewhere along the way, after the constant accusations, the gaslighting, the silent treatments, you started to feel like maybe you were the problem. Maybe you were too emotional, maybe you really were overreacting, Maybe you were fundamentally flawed. That's what he wanted you to believe, because if you believe you're broken, then you'll stay. If you believe you're defective, then you'll keep chasing his approval like it's oxygen. If you believe you're unworthy, then his treatment starts to feel normal, even justified. But here's the truth. You are not broken. You are wounded, and those are two very different things. You didn't fall apart because you were weak. You collapsed because you were carrying too much for too long. You didn't lose yourself because you were flawed. You lost yourself because someone was actively eroding your confidence. One subtle criticism, one twisted argument, one denial of reality at a time. Jordan Peterson says that the soul of a human being is built to confront suffering, to voluntarily bear the weight of chaos, and in doing so, find meaning. But what he also teaches is that suffering must be integrated honestly. And you cannot integrate what you haven't named, so let's name it now. What you endured was not love. It was manipulation, psychological abuse, emotional starvation disguised as commitment. You didn't imagine it. You endured it, and the fact that you still care, that you still wonder if it was your fault, that speaks not to your brokenness, but to your depth, to your heart, to your loyalty, to your desire to see the good, even when it came at the cost of your peace. That is not weakness, that is strength in disguise. But there comes a time when strength must shift from surviving him to saving yourself. Because if you stay too long in that environment, your wounds stop bleeding and start festering. They become shame, they become silence, they become a story you tell yourself over and over again. Maybe I deserve this. But you don't, not then, not now, not ever. The pain you feel is real, and it didn't come from nowhere. It came from giving your whole heart to someone who could only use it as leverage. It came from trying to communicate with someone who heard only what served them. It came from forgiving someone who weaponized your forgiveness. That's where the wound lies, in the betrayal of something you believed was sacred. But wounds can heal, and healing doesn't begin with pretending it didn't happen. It begins with telling yourself a new story, one grounded in truth. You're not too much, you're not too sensitive, you're not dramatic. You're a human being who has been slowly starved of validation, truth, affection, and presence. And you adapted. Of course you cried. Of course you lashed out. Of course you begged. Of course you stayed longer than you should have. That's not crazy. That's human. The problem isn't that you were too emotional. The problem is that you were in an environment that punished emotion. It's not that you were needy. It's that you were with someone who used your needs to shame you. You don't need to be fixed. You need to be heard. You need to be seen. You need to stop making excuses for someone else's cruelty and start acknowledging the courage it took just to survive it. Jordan Peterson often says that the pathway to redemption begins with telling the truth, starting with the truth about your own experience. And the truth is this: you are not broken. You were wounded by someone who didn't know how to love. And even in the depths of that pain, you stayed kind, you stayed loyal, you stayed open. But now, you must stay awake. Because the world does not need more women who are quiet in their suffering. The world needs women who remember who they are, who rise from the ashes of confusion and say, no more. You're not a burden, you're not unstable, you're not unlovable, you are healing, and healing is not easy, it's brutal, it's lonely, it's messy. But it's worth it, because what's on the other side is not just survival, it's rebirth. You're not broken, you're just remembering who you were before someone convinced you to forget. The narcissistic husband may have tried to define you, diminish you, even destroy you. But he does not get the final word. You do. Choose truth, choose healing, choose yourself. That is where your power lies.